Hi, my name is Brian Beasley. I'm Director of Data Science Consulting for CCG, and I appreciate you joining me on your Tuesday morning to talk about artificial intelligence. As the head of a data science consulting practice, one of the things that I hear all the time is I know that I need to be doing artificial intelligence, I just don't know where to start. And that's a very common sentiment, but it's also a very understandable sentiment. You know that it's important because your competitors are doing it. The stakes are high. And so if you aren't doing it, then you're not keeping up, and soon you'll be behind. But at the same time, it's difficult to know where to start because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of technical jargon. It's easy to get lost in the details around all that there is to do with artificial intelligence. And so my hope today is to sort of cut through all the technical jargon and noise. We're not going to go too deep into that. I'll mention some of the tools, but only briefly. What we're going to do today is focus primarily on the use cases for artificial intelligence and how other organizations have really harnessed the power of AI to drive their business and get measurable results. If you were hoping for a deeper dive, don't worry, we've got another workshop coming up in about 2 weeks on the 18th, where we'll go into some of these tools in a little bit more depth. You're obviously welcome to join for that, would love to have you. Or if you want to send folks from your team just to get a primer on some of the more detail. But today we're really going to try and keep it pretty high level. The other thing is we've got a pretty short time here. We're doing this all in 30 minutes. And so in the interest of time, I'm going to ask that if you have any questions, please go ahead and put those into the chat, and we'll get to those at the end. So with that housekeeping out of the way, let's go ahead and jump right in. So we're going to be talking about artificial intelligence across pretty much 3 main families of artificial intelligence. The first one will be pre-built AI. The second one is going to be custom machine learning. And the third is going to be a newcomer to the realm of artificial intelligence just in the last couple of years or so, which is knowledge mining. We're going to jump in first with pre-built artificial intelligence. So as long as artificial intelligence has been in the popular imagination, there's always been a fascination with getting computers to mimic human capabilities, whether that's our intuition or whether that's just our 5 senses. And because of that, there's been a lot of research that has been poured into getting computers to mimic human capabilities at the highest levels of research in academia as well as in the marketplace. And so because of that, when you think about things like language, vision, speech, web search, a lot of those feel like very futuristic types of applications. But the reality is that they're probably a lot closer than you might think, because you don't have to start from scratch when you build these things. There are pre-built artificial intelligence services that are available in the marketplace where you can really just plug in your data and receive the benefit of trained artificial intelligence for your business. And one way that that's available is through Azure Cognitive Services. So I'm going to talk through some of the cognitive services that are available in really a very simple format where you simply send your data and you receive back an artificial intelligence response. So the first family of that is vision. So if you've got videos that you are storing and don't know how to process, you can send those through to Azure for processing. If you've got images that you want to find specific objects or qualify the objects that are in those images, you can do that. Text and forms are very common for vision-based applications. So if you've got old processes maybe that are handled by paper forms that people have filled out, and you want to digitize all of that information so you can extract knowledge from it, that's all well within the realm of possibility. Speech is another one. And so if you've got audio files, maybe from your customer support, or maybe from dictation, right? Folks on the front line dictating into their phones. There are options to convert that speech to text, to identify who's speaking, to translate between languages. And now the reverse is actually possible as well, where you can actually generate very realistic sounding speech from text. On the language side, if you've got text data that you don't know what to do with, there are loads of possibilities out there, from extracting key phrases to identifying the speaker's intent, all the way on up to building conversational bots in pretty simple fashion, even drag and drop sort of interface-based tools to build conversational bots that you can use on your website or through your support channels. It's all available for you pre-built, and you don't have to start from scratch. Web search is another one. So if you need the ability to search within your website's domain, that's something that's available right out of the box. And one where we see a lot of movement, especially in recent years, is the ability to make intelligent decisions artificially. And so here we see the anomaly detector, so recognizing the patterns that exist within data and then noticing when something is different. The content moderator, if you've got forums on your website and you want to be able to filter content that is inappropriate or that breaks the rules of engagement, that's also pre-built and available. And then there's a personalization engine as well, which I'll talk about a little bit as we dive into some common pre-built AI scenarios. So what I just described were a number of capabilities, but how do those really make a difference to a business? And I'll give you a few examples. Robotic process automation, or RPA, is something you've probably come across and heard quite a bit about. It really comes down to looking at what is on a computer screen and being able to continue the process from there. So it's sort of the next step or the next iteration of the expert systems of the old days. Intelligent customer support, as I mentioned before, getting chatbots built is really possible soup to nuts in some of these pre-built scenarios. Personalization is a very interesting one, and this is one where Microsoft themselves have sort of drunk their own Kool-Aid here. You may be familiar with the Xbox product, right? It's a very popular gaming platform that Microsoft owns, completely separate team from the artificial intelligence team that puts these cognitive services out. So when Xbox was about 10 years old, they had developed a pretty mature approach to recommending content to their users. You may not realize it, but Xbox as a gaming platform isn't just a gaming platform. It's a fairly sophisticated marketplace where offers are made, purchase this game, or rent this movie. And there's a need to engage users in a way that keeps them interacting with that platform to make it commercially viable. So the Xbox product was fairly mature when the cognitive services team said, hey, we've got this new recommender product that takes the content that you have available, takes what we know about the user, takes what we know about the environment, is it raining outside, et cetera, and decides which content is most likely for that user to engage with. And they brought that internally to the Xbox team, and the Xbox team was naturally skeptical at first. They had a mature and well-baked product. But they decided to go ahead and give it a test. And the Xbox team, when the personalizer got into production, actually saw a 40% uplift in click-through rates. And that's the same personalizer that you have access to today. You could spin up an account and start using it on your own products for a trial. So that's personalization. Sentiment analysis. If you've got video of people in a store or a branch, right? Or if you've got audio of people on the phone, the ability to take that and know what is that person happy or sad, and then you can take that and you can tie it to what products are they looking at or what features are they discussing, so that you can learn about how to better serve your customers. Object detection is very common. This is one you see in insurance a lot. So you now have the ability to send a picture in to your insurance company as part of a claim to automate the underwriting process. It's a huge cost saver in the insurance agent industry. Intelligent agents, there's another very interesting story here. If you've ever driven for Uber, you may have been asked to take a picture of yourself from time to time while you are while you're in process of finding rides. And the reason for that is to verify that you, the person behind the wheel, are the same driver that has been registered to drive with the service. And so this is an application that's made millions of rides safer over the course of the last 4 or 5 years. What you may not know is that under the covers, Uber is relying primarily on Microsoft's facial recognition software, the same facial recognition software that you have access to through cognitive services. And so if you are, let's say, a financial institution and you're still relying on signature cards to verify transactions, and being able to add a layer of social security to that. Or if you're a retailer and the minute a customer walks in the store, you can identify that customer, know what they've shopped in the past, and provide that information to the clerk at the point of sale to provide upsell, cross-sell recommendations. So really powerful options here that you just may not know are pre-built and available for you to use. So that was the pre-built AI, which again really centers around kind of our 5 senses and being able to get computers to do the kinds of things that humans do. Now we're going to move on to custom machine learning. Custom machine learning I kind of think of as that 6th sense. So it's about applying specific domain knowledge to build very targeted artificial intelligences that are fit for a very specific purpose. One way that I like to think about it is in your company, in your industry, you have experts who have developed their expertise over time and repetition and seeing the same scenarios over and over and over again. Well, if you've got a lot of data, you have the raw materials to make experts out of machines. By feeding that data, that mass quantity of data through a machine learning application, it can also learn to make very similar decisions to those that your experts would make. What we've seen mostly is that these machines do best when they have an interactive sort of loop together with those experts. So on the one hand, the machines can provide very good decision support. Maybe they are able to just decision the very easy cases and leaving the trickier or harder cases to the experts. Or maybe they're given the situations where there is far too much data for a human to take in quickly and be able to process. So you start with a machine learned decision to begin, and then let the expert sort of vet that decision before the business actually takes action. And in response, the experts can actually provide feedback to the models that makes new data, that makes them better and better over time. Ingesting machine learning into your existing business processes can have a lot of benefits. The first one is speed. So machine learning applications can generally make decisions in a matter of seconds instead of minutes or days. Availability, right? Machine learning applications can be available 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, with no need for paid time off and weekends. Consistency, the same decision rules will be applied no matter what. So if you've got decisions that you're sending to one analyst and a different analyst would make a completely different decision, or maybe the person just didn't get much sleep last night, so their disposition is a little bit different. You don't have that with machine learning. In machine learning, the same decision rules are going to be applied consistently to every single case. Adaptiveness, so the ability to feed in new data over time and let those decision rules evolve, as well as the ability, as I mentioned before, to just take in massive quantities of data, far more than a human could take in years of dedicated study. And all of this leads to more accurate decision making, which is really what we want for your business and for your processes. So let's talk about some ways that this gets used in the real world. Predictive maintenance is one that you've probably heard and seen quite a bit. If you have any type of physical equipment and you want to know when it's going to break down, or maybe even better, when it's going to start producing defects, those are all possible with custom machine learning. Fraud detection, so identifying patterns that are specific to your industry and then recognizing when something is out of the ordinary and being able to flag that for investigation. Sales forecasting, so having a good foresight into what your business performance is going to be so that you can plan accordingly. Or maybe even behind the sales forecasting, what about that latent demand, the demand that maybe doesn't get met? So the ability to see what maybe is being missed and devise strategies to capture that. Customer churn is a big one. So if you've got behavioral data on your customers, you can very quickly and easily identify who's displaying patterns that makes it look like we may not have them for much longer. So you can take corrective action and keep those folks. A big one that I'll dive into a little bit more is inventory management, which can be a very difficult process. And one company that's really nailing that is Little Caesars. When you think of Little Caesars, you probably immediately think of that hot and ready promise, right? It's a very unique promise in the industry, and it's one that garners loyalty amongst Little Caesars customers. But that promise it also comes with a few hangups. The first one is that it's a promise that you better keep. If you show up and customers aren't out the door in 3 minutes with that pizza, you've probably just lost some loyalty among those customers. But on the flip side of that, that means that you need to have pizzas constantly on the shelf and ready to go. So there's a huge potential there for waste. Add to that the complication of the fact that Little Caesars has thousands of stores across the country that each have their own unique demand cycle. And so you can't necessarily send a data scientist or statistician to every store to make a forecasting model, nor can you just apply the same forecasting model to every single store. It wouldn't work, right? A store that is next to a professional sports arena, for example, is going to have a very different demand pattern on game day than one that's in the middle of a rural or suburban setting. So there's a lot of complexity there. Well, with machine learning, the type of scale that I just said wasn't really possible. Suddenly it becomes possible. What Little Caesars did is they actually applied automated machine learning to let their data science build thousands of models for every store, and then for every product line within that store that has the hot and ready promise attached to it. And by doing so, they've built over 5,000 models that they use to forecast the inventory that they need and manage their inventory accordingly. And the result has been a 20% reduction in waste. It's incredible savings. You think about, in the past I mentioned, that would have taken an army of data scientists to be able to manage. It would have been completely intractable. But with modern machine learning capabilities, it's something that can be done with a relatively small team of cross-functional data engineers, data scientists, and store managers. So how does that work? What I want to mention here is the fact that this machine learning is something that can really be additive to the things that you're already doing. Think about the information that you would need if you were a store manager to do your inventory forecasting. Of course, you would need your point of sale data. You might take into consideration things like what's the weather expected to be, or the same geographical features, like I mentioned, we're near a stadium or we're not, right? Maybe you have all that information today and you're already using it in potentially an inventory ordering system, or maybe you have some basic analytics and dashboards built in a program like Power BI. Well, the machine learning is really additive on top of that. So you take that same data and you use it to train a little dedicated artificial intelligence or a model. Once that artificial intelligence has got a grip on your demand patterns, it can be deployed to create new forecasts, in this case on a nightly basis, although it can always be done more frequently or less frequently based on needs. And then as new data comes in, it continues to learn on that new data and improve itself so that the forecasts get better and better over time. And that's how Little Caesars was able to gain such a huge advantage in terms of being able to reduce waste. Azure Machine Learning has a lot of great attributes that make it a great place to start. First off, it's got something for all skill levels. If you've got a team of data scientists who want to jump in and start coding in Python, it supports that. If you've got a team of business analysts who are new to machine learning and want some drag and drop sort of functionality to get started, it's got that as well. MLOps really refers to the distance between research and action. Azure Machine Learning really shortens that distance so that once you've got that artificial intelligence, it's very easy to inject into your business processes. It relies quite a bit on open source technology, so you can continue to stay on the cutting edge. And ultimately, when you're dealing with Microsoft, it's important to remember that we're dealing with the #1 most trusted technology partner for enterprises in the world. And so you've got incredible security and incredible scalability really at your fingertips. So we've talked a little bit through both artificial intelligence that's pre-built as well as custom machine learning. Let's dive into knowledge mining, which is the third one. I mentioned it's a little bit newer. When I talk about knowledge mining, what I'm really talking about is kind of packaging up the other two versions of AI in a new way that makes artificial intelligence more accessible to your user base. And it really centers around the concept of search. So you think about search, maybe 15, 20 years ago, it was very based on, is there an exact match somewhere in my body of text? Very simple. fast forward 10 years and we had gotten to a point where search could be contextual, right? It could sort of adapt to, we think this is what you meant, but again, it was all very text focused. With cognitive search, we now have the ability to search all sorts of unstructured data, not just the text, but handwriting, audio, images. And this allows us to expose insights and knowledge to users in brand new ways. Let's talk about some ways that this is being used in industry. So if you've got a catalog of assets that you want to expose to your users to be able to search, that's a possibility. Digital asset management is another one, and it's one that's actually being used at the Met in New York. So they've got one of the largest collections of historic art in the world, spanning over 5,000 years. And their goal is to make that art available not just to through the 2 million people that walk through their doors annually, but to the 3.9 billion internet connected people globally. So what they're doing is they're actually digitizing their collection of art by taking mostly images, in some cases 3D scans, and then applying tags to that art so that it's all searchable. But they're also applying artificial intelligence, image recognition to that art, and in so doing, they're finding new patterns that they hadn't discovered in the art previously. It's really, really fascinating stuff. Other common knowledge mining scenarios: technical content review and process management. We've got a client who's in the construction industry, and we found that while there is a lot of good information available in sort of the written text around project scope, you know, we need this building to be built, we need this room to be remodeled. A lot of that knowledge is also really caught up in images and handwriting, the types of things that traditional approaches really just can't get at. And so the ability to get into those images, make those searchable and make those available to the people who are building proposals and building estimates is a huge time saver in that process. Customer feedback analytics is one. So again, I'd mentioned the customer service earlier. Right now, imagine being able to search that customer service across multiple channels. So if someone calls in and they're not happy, right? If you can take that same interaction and tie it up to a chat that was done previously, right? Now you've got a richer body of knowledge to be able to gain insights on. Auditing and compliance is another one. This one is probably one of the most common that we see in knowledge mining. And this is one that PwC is actually nailing in their tax and compliance division. What they've done is they've actually built a cognitive search knowledge mining application to help their tax and compliance clients recognize the regulations that they're obligated to. And they've actually been able to, by feeding through a company's documents, they've been able to get about a 95% match rate in terms of correctly identifying immediately the regulations that company needs to be aware of as it goes through its tax and compliance processes. So really, again, amazing things. And I'll talk a little bit about how this works as well. So again, it all starts about having the data in a digital format, collecting it in the same place. And then, as I mentioned, it's really about applying the same skills that we discussed before. So this first set here are those cognitive skills from the pre-built AI section. Hopefully these look familiar. So you've got your images, you've got your PDF, and what you're doing is you're lining those up in a chain to say, we're going to crack these images and we're going to find the text. We're going to extract the text from the PDF. We're going to merge those together. We're going to find the important entities. Maybe it's the name of a competitor. Maybe it's the name of a product of ours or a feature of that product. We're going to translate it if we need to. All of those just lined up automatically. And then we can go a step further and apply some custom machine learning on top of that. So we've seen use cases like clause extraction. So does this contract contain a hold harmless agreement, yes or no? Or risk identification, right? Is based off of the text in this document, would we classify this particular project as high risk, medium risk, or low risk? Let's tag that document with that. And then all of that becomes available through an easily searchable web interface so that the people who are carrying out those processes can filter their search and say, well, only show me those contracts that have a hold harmless agreement, but also mention, competitor X, right? So all of that is possible within a knowledge mining scenario. So that's the three sort of families of artificial intelligence that I wanted to talk through, and we've covered a lot of ground in a very short time. I hope that this has gotten your juices flowing in terms of what use cases might be relevant to you and your industry. But I also just want to mention that this is really backed up by incredible scale. Microsoft, as I mentioned before, is really drinking their own Kool-Aid when it comes to this. This is how Microsoft runs their business. But not only Microsoft, there really are use cases in just about every industry. Each logo on the screen has a story to tell. So it really comes down to getting connected with the experts who can help you take that first step and see that journey through to business value. And that's what we want to offer with CCG.